My name is Andrew White, and this morning I'm thrilled to be joined by Stan NOWAK, Vice President at Red Cat, the US-based autonomy specialist. Thank you for joining us.
It's really
Stan.
great to be here. Thank you so much.
Stan, if we can start, what is Red Cat's vision for the role of autonomous platforms in the future operating environment?
It's a really great question. If we were to rewind back about 4 years ago when I first started with Red Cat, there was a very strategic decision to evolve our company into an all-domain company. Most of the folks that, in the business development team and other departments in our company are former warfighters themselves. So there's a lot of strategic meetings that happen in our company to see where the battlefield is going. So even then, when Ukraine was kind of even just getting off the ground, we saw how conflict was changing. We saw how drones and autonomous systems were really changing the battlefield forever, much like the machine gun did many, many years ago. And so as we evolved our company, we saw, okay, there's need for these all-domain solutions, not just aerial, moving into both maritime as well, but it's really more about the interconnection, the interconnectivity, interchangeability of these systems working together. And so we made a conscious effort to not only create a family of systems around the aerial assets that we have from a small drone perspective, but then integrate those into maritime systems like unmanned surface vessels. And then with even recent acquisitions through swarming and AI, now you're adding that layer into the tech stack, which really builds a beautiful battlefield ecosystem, which then also plays nice with our coalition partners worldwide. So that was very strategic in intent. And we're now just starting to see the fruits of that labor, currently.
Obviously, you're accredited by the Pentagon as a blue UAS provider, so everything is supply chain is US based. How does that set you apart from your competition, particularly, outside your NATO partners?
So at Red Cat, we knew right away that the success of our company was not necessarily going to be based just on our products alone. It was going to be based on multiple factors, meaning speed to market, strong supply chain, and high rates of manufacturing. If you look in the United States, really how many drone companies there are in our space, meaning small quad-rotor, short-range reconnaissance drones, there's really only a handful of companies that can say that they can do these kind of like levels of manufacturing that's required for Department of War. And so that was very much part of our roadmap, was to make sure that we had substantial factories, depending on demand, high rates of scales of manufacturing, but then strong supply chain. So in reference to Blue UAS, what's interesting about that is that slowly over time we were able to wean ourselves off of parts and systems that were from non-US countries, to where the rigors of being certified Blue UAS is not easy. And so to make that list actually is really important for us. So if you look at the international community, how they look at the Blue UAS list is that a lot of the burden from a regulatory standpoint, certification standpoint, has then been taken off of our international partners, because if you're on that list, you've already gone through those rigors. And so we've been able to actually use that as an advantage to work with our coalition partners in getting our drones into the hands of their warfighters, because of the painstaking process that we went through to be on that list.
Okay, so it certainly helps your export potential being on the list.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of weight on the idea of being Blue UAS, being NDAA compliant with the United States. A lot more countries now are looking at that as, yes, we also want to wean ourselves off of Chinese parts and what have you. And so this kind of paved the way in the international community to say, wow, if the United States is doing this, we need to do that now, and that you're going to start to see that more and more as we move forward.
Got it. I got it. So with that in mind, how would you prioritize the global markets, for Red Cat? Who are you specifically targeting, in the near future?
As far as prioritization of the markets that we were looking at, obviously European Union, NATO, we were able to get our Black Widow on the NSPA list to be able to open that doorway to sell into NATO countries. Obviously, with the Ukraine war still happening, countries like Poland are very much our ally when it even comes to our customer set. And so that's one of our main focuses. The other main focus really is Asia Pacific. And so, we are always looking at what's the next great conflict, and things are starting to lean towards this idea of a very different battlefield environment from what Ukraine is going through right now. We're looking at littoral environments. We're looking at thousands of miles of island chains. How do you start to do this peer-on-peer battlefield tactics with the current technology that we have today? And so you have to look at that roadmap from an innovation perspective and say, okay, who are we partnering with? Are we partnering with the right people? Are we able to have these systems work together in that type of environment where, from a maritime, air assets, all working together in an environment that is very actually detrimental to your systems themselves? I mean, salt water wants to eat through everything, and so marinizing things, right? That's a huge deal as we're moving forward. How are you integrating aerial assets with maritime assets? Right? How are they working together? There's a term that I like to use called the Internet of Battlefield Things. And it's the idea of it's an interconnected battlefield of all of these assets playing nice together on in an environment, especially when it's a contested environment with GPS denied. All of those things add these layers to our systems that of looking forward on what the next great conflict is. Now, recent events like the Middle East, Strait of Hormuz, that opened up a whole nother thing about just supply chain in general, what could happen on a global scale. So automatically, when oil tankers were not able to make it through the strait, we actually started to get calls saying, well, could we use your unmanned surface vessels as escorts? That opened up a whole new use case for us, right? And so the battlefield is dynamically changing, and we're prepared to utilize our systems for the future.
Very interesting. Eurosatory 2026, what are you promoting?
So we're very fortunate and honored to be here at Eurosatory 2026. Just yesterday, we put out a press release around a new quad-rotor variant called Hellcat. Hellcat is actually based on the backbone of our flagship product, which is the Black Widow. The Black Widow was the winner of the Short-Range Reconnaissance Program for the U.S. Army. So there were a lot of lessons learned in the development of that small quad. We designed it specifically to U.S. Army requirements. And so once the Ukraine war started, we started to send and deploy engineers to the front lines to really work with those warfighters to see how this battlefield is dynamically changing, not week to week, day to day. And so we've had ongoing presence on the front lines there, and we call it soldierneering, this idea of working with warfighters on a regular basis, because it is somewhat of a cat and mouse game with your adversary. From a GPS denied and contested environment, you're tweaking one thing on your side, your adversary is tweaking something on their side, and you have to constantly do that dance. And so all of that intelligence data that we gathered really is what spawned the idea of making Hellcat now available to the global community. What are their needs and wants and desires? What are their specific requirements? And make the architecture of the drone open enough to be able to satisfy those requirements. Everything from you're optional to do a variety of command and control systems, your options for antennas, your options for sensors. We've made Hellcat now open enough to be able to work with almost any customer in the world and meet their high demands. Okay.
And is Hellcat available?
Hellcat is currently in development. We are looking at this next quarter to be at full rate production and available to the global community.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Stan. You're very active as a company in terms of acquisition, and I've noted FlightWave, Edge 130 Blue, which obviously strengthen your long-range offerings. What implications might that have for ground and special operations forces in the land environment moving forward?
Yeah, so obviously what we've noticed when it comes to how the battlefield operates and how dynamic it is, like I've been saying, really, again, sitting down and listening to those customers and seeing how they operate on a daily basis. What the Edge 130 has provided is there's not necessarily a specific category for a drone like that. It's a hybrid VTOL. It's a tricopter. It gets about double the distance of what our Black Widow drone is because it can transition to forward flight, which makes it more efficient as it's flying. Multiple sensors. And so when you go from a small quad up to then like the next Group 2 level, there's this kind of gap that's within there, right? And so the Edge 130 is kind of serving the needs of that gap to still make something that's rucksack portable and light, but gives you the distance to be able to operate at 20 kilometers. Now what's interesting as far as the acquisitions go for our company, again, it's very, very strategic, right? And so we're both on the hardware side, but also now moving into the software side. So we have additional acquisitions that we've done recently. APM Swarm Robotics is a US-based swarming company, which we're able to apply that swarming technology not only to our aerial assets, but also to our unmanned surface vessels. We just recently announced the acquisition of a company called Quaise, which is actually out of Canada. Quaise develops charging pad technology, so remote charging pad technology. So we always say that, to be able to operate in a battlefield environment, you have to be able to charge your drones on a regular basis. So imagine a forward operator putting out these charging pads on the battlefield so that if you have something that only flies for 50 minutes, you can land it on the pad, charge it, and then take off again and extend your mission. And then with not only just in acquisitions, but a homegrown company we developed called Blue Ops, which now has moved us in the maritime domain with unmanned surface vessels. So what you're going to see is this ecosystem that we've developed. All of these drones and unmanned surface vessels, the charging pad technology, the swarming technology, is all going to be integrated together to really form this this elite package of marsupial deployment of our drones over an extended distance. Swarms of drones being deployed from constellations of boats. Again, when I start talking about these littoral environments that we're potentially going to move into, that's exactly what we've been designing for the last few years.
Fascinating. Thank you, Stan. I could talk to you all day about this, but we're out of time, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us at Eurosatory News.